didn't even know what a pick-me was when I met her. I just thought she was loud, overly helpful. The kind of girl who laughed a second too long at men's jokes and always found a way to bring up how different she was from other girls. She was my boyfriend's friend first. That should have been my first warning. She made a big show of welcoming me, hugged me like we were already best friends, told everyone how happy she was that finally he had a nice girl. The compliment felt strange, like it came with an invisible footnote. From the beginning, she positioned herself as harmless. She'd say things like, "I'm basically one of the guys," or "I hate drama, that's why I get along better with men." Every sentence was a disclaimer. Then came the comparisons. Not directly. Never directly. She'd say, "I could never date someone like him. I'm too independent," and then glance at me. Or, "Some girls get so emotional in relationships, I don't get it," right after I'd talked about a disagreement I had with him. If I wore makeup, she'd comment on how she preferred a natural look. If I dressed casually, she'd joke about how she always makes an effort. And my boyfriend? He laughed. He always laughed. She texted him constantly, screenshots of memes, updates about her day, little check-ins. When I asked about it, he brushed it off. "She's just like that. She's not into me." That sentence should be engraved on a warning sign. She started planting herself into our relationship, offering to help him pick gifts for me, asking his opinion on her outfits, calling him when she was having a breakdown late at night. When I expressed discomfort, she flipped the narrative instantly. "Oh my God, I didn't realize you were insecure," she said, wide-eyed. "I'll back off if it makes you uncomfortable. I just thought we were all friends." Suddenly, I was the problem. The tension escalated slowly, like a bruise spreading under the skin. She never crossed a line in front of me, only near it. Sitting too close, touching his arm when she laughed, complimenting him in ways that sounded platonic but felt intimate. "You're such a good guy," she'd say. "Girls always take advantage of that." I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was overthinking, that I wasn't the jealous type. Then came the night that changed everything. We were at a small gathering. Nothing fancy. Drinks, music, people sitting on the floor. I went to the kitchen to grab water, and when I came back, I saw her leaning in toward him, whispering something in his ear. He was smiling. Softly. Intimately. When she noticed me, she pulled back immediately and laughed loudly. "I was just telling him how lucky he is to have you." I didn't confront her. I confronted him later. He sighed like I was exhausting him. "You're reading into things. She's just friendly. You don't have to compete with her." That sentence landed like a slap. I stopped arguing after that, not because I believed him, but because I decided to watch. And that's when I learned something important about pick-me girls. They don't notice when you stop reacting. They notice when you stop competing. I became calm, pleasant, detached. I stopped asking questions, stopped checking his phone, stopped reacting when she made her little comments. I treated her with politeness so neutral it confused her. And while she was busy trying to provoke a reaction from me, I started working on myself. I focused on my career, took on extra responsibilities, expanded my network, started dressing the way I liked, not to compete with her, but because I was finally dressing for myself. I made new friends, people who didn't thrive on comparison. The shift was subtle, but it changed everything. My boyfriend started noticing that I wasn't as available, that I didn't revolve around him anymore, that I didn't seek reassurance, and she noticed too. Her behavior escalated. She started being more obvious, posting photos with him, tagging him excessively, making jokes online about how some girls don't appreciate good men. I let her, because by then I already knew what she wanted: attention, validation, a reaction, and I was giving her none. The real turning point came when my boyfriend finally crossed the line. Not physically, but emotionally. He confided in her about an argument we had. She took that opening and ran with it. He told me later, casually, "She thinks you're pulling away because you're bored." That was it, not because he listened to her, but because he trusted her opinion over my presence. I ended the relationship quietly. No screaming, no accusations, just a calm conversation where I said, "This doesn't feel right anymore." He was shocked. She was furious. She messaged me that night. Long paragraphs, accusations disguised as concern. "I always knew you'd hurt him. He deserves someone who won't give up so easily." I tried to help you. I blocked her. And here's where the revenge actually happened, without me lifting a finger. Once I was gone, she lost her role. No girlfriend to compete with. No woman to feel superior to. No triangle to validate her importance. She tried to step into my place, and he didn't want her. Turns out he liked her best when she was an accessory, not a replacement. Their dynamic collapsed quickly. Without me as the other woman, she had nothing to contrast herself against. Her charm wore thin. Her constant need for attention became obvious. Meanwhile, my life expanded. New job, new city, new peace. Months later, I heard through mutuals that she still talked about me, still compared herself to me, still framed herself as the misunderstood savior. I never corrected the story, because the truth was simple and devastating. She didn't lose him to me. She lost because I stopped playing the game she needed to feel chosen. And that, more than confrontation or exposure, was the most satisfying ending I could have imagined. I thought walking away would be the end of it. I was wrong. For a while it was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that feels staged, like someone holding their breath before doing something reckless. I focused on my new routine, longer work hours, new faces, mornings that didn't start with anxiety. For the first time in a long time, my life felt like it belonged to me. And then she started unraveling. It began subtly. Mutual friends reached out with awkward questions, masked as concern. Had I really abandoned him out of nowhere? Was it true I had been emotionally distant for months? Did I know she was just trying to support him through a difficult breakup? I realized she had rewritten the narrative. In her version, I was the cold girlfriend who walked away without explanation. She was the loyal friend who stayed, the one who answered his late-night calls, helped him heal, and sacrificed her own peace to be there for him. Except this time, the story didn't land the way she expected. Because without me in the picture, her behavior had nowhere to hide. She started showing up everywhere he was, uninvited, overdressed, overfamiliar. She inserted herself into his routines, his plans, his moods. What once looked like concern now looked like obsession. He began pulling back. That rejection did something to her. She posted more. Louder captions, thirst traps disguised as confidence, passive-aggressive quotes about loyalty and betrayal. She tagged him constantly, throwbacks, inside jokes, moments that never meant what she claimed they did. People started noticing. And then she made her biggest mistake. She tried to come for me publicly. She posted a long story, no names, but detailed enough for anyone who knew us to recognize the situation. About girls who act innocent but steal emotional labor, about women who play victim while men suffer, about how some people can't handle being replaced. I didn't respond. Not publicly, not privately, but others did. Women who had watched her do the same thing before, girls who had quietly distanced themselves over the years. One by one, they began sharing their own stories, not tagging her, not accusing her outright, just telling the truth. Patterns emerged: a best friend's ex, a coworker's boyfriend, a roommate's situationship, always the same arc, always the same justification, always the same outcome. The comments under her post quiet, then uncomfortable, then damning. She deleted it within hours. By then, the damage was done. My ex reached out not long after. He didn't apologize, not fully, but he admitted something that mattered more. I didn't realize how much she needed to be needed, he said, and how much she needed you to look bad so she could look better. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt free. The final twist came months later, when I ran into her unexpectedly at an event. She looked smaller somehow, less certain, still dressed for attention, but without the audience she once commanded. She tried to smile. "I hope you're doing well," she said too quickly. "I am," I replied. And for the first time it wasn't a performance. She hesitated, then said, "I never meant to hurt you." I believed that. In the way you believe someone who never once considered the consequences of their actions. "I know," I said. "That's why it hurt." She didn't respond. As I walked away, I realized something important. I hadn't gotten back at her by exposing her, or humiliating her, or taking something from her. I got back at her by removing myself from the role she needed me to play. Without me as the comparison, she had no reflection. Without me as the threat, she had no purpose. Without me as the other woman, she had no story. And the most ironic part? The revenge she feared never came. Because the real consequence was that I moved on, and she stayed exactly where she'd always been, still trying to be chosen. Months turned into a year, and life had shifted in ways I never expected. I started seeing the consequences of her actions unravel, slowly at first, then like a dam bursting. People who once admired her began to whisper behind her back. Mutual friends began to avoid her, not out of malice, but because the pattern was obvious now. The attention she craved no longer materialized in ways that made her feel powerful. Her charm had limits, and the world was finally seeing them. Meanwhile, my life kept improving. I got promoted at work, taking on responsibilities that I had previously shied away from, in the fear that my life might be hijacked by chaos again. My confidence returned, not because of her downfall, but because I stopped letting her define my worth. I started going out with friends I had long neglected, rediscovering hobbies and rebuilding the version of myself that existed before she arrived in my life, like a storm. And then came the twist I never expected. One evening, at a business networking gala, I ran into Ronald, my ex-boyfriend from the last story. The man who had been my sanctuary when she was trying to dismantle everything I believed about love and friendship. He greeted me warmly, but I noticed a shadow in his eyes. The same shadow that used to flinch whenever she laughed too loudly in a room. "I heard about her," he said softly, almost as if he feared she might overhear. I nodded, saying nothing. Words weren't necessary. We shared a look that conveyed everything: the chaos she had caused, the manipulations, the heartbreak, and the fact that we had survived it stronger. "What happened to her?" I asked finally. Ronald hesitated, then told me. Her social life had crumbled. The men she tried to attract began to see her as shallow, her attempts at flattery too obvious. Her friendships frayed because she had relied on manipulation rather than true connection. She had become the girl who had all the attention, but none of the respect. Everyone she thought she could control had finally stopped reacting, and I realized she had built her life on the reactions of others. Without them, she had nothing. It wasn't immediate, but the effects were clear. Her attempts to seek new boyfriends were predictable now, easy for anyone to spot. She tried her friendly, approachable, just one of the guys act again, but people had learned the pattern. When she tried to get close to someone, the red flags I had felt instinctively for years were now visible to anyone paying attention. Meanwhile, my own love life flourished. I met someone new, not like Ronald, not someone I had history with, but someone who genuinely admired and respected me. He didn't need me to compete for his attention, didn't try to charm me with just trying to be helpful excuses. With him, there were no games, no manipulations. Everything was direct, honest, and real. And every time I saw her posts online, always carefully curated, always trying to show how happy and powerful she was, I felt a quiet, vindicating satisfaction. Not cruelty, not revenge in the typical sense, just the deep knowledge that I had moved on, that I had reclaimed myself, that she had lost the one thing she never knew how to create: authenticity. The most satisfying moment came unexpectedly, on a night I wasn't even thinking about her. I was attending a work function, presenting an award I had earned after years of dedication. As I walked across the stage, I saw her sitting in the audience. No friends, no partner, just her. She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. The contrast between the confident, self-assured woman I had become and the fragile performative presence she projected was striking. And in that moment, I realized something important. I didn't need her downfall to feel victorious. I only needed to live my life authentically, fully, without letting her manipulation dictate my actions. That was the ultimate lesson, and, in a way, the ultimate revenge. I had reclaimed my life. She had nothing left but herself. And in the quiet aftermath, I understood why I had stayed silent for so long, why I had allowed her to manipulate me in the past. It wasn't weakness, it was preparation. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every moment of doubt had taught me to recognize patterns, to trust my instincts, and to value authenticity over chaos. The pick-me girl had lost, but I didn't win in the way she expected. I won by walking away, by growing, and by finally finding the life and love that she could never touch. It wasn't immediate, but I started hearing whispers first, mutual acquaintances murmuring about her latest antics. She had started trying to insert herself into professional circles, pretending she was ambitious and capable, posting her successes online while subtly hinting that she had connections and influence. People who had once laughed at my reactions now began to share stories about her manipulations, casually dropping hints at gatherings, at dinners, at casual meetups. At first, I ignored it. I had learned my lesson. The quieter I was, the faster her own patterns would catch up with her. And slowly, they did. She tried to contact Ronald again, months after everything had calmed down. He didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge her existence. The man who once flirted with chaos now had boundaries so firm they felt like concrete walls. I watched quietly as she sent messages that were carefully phrased, manipulative, apologetic, even nostalgic, all ignored. And she started spiraling. She posted online about heartbreak, betrayal, and misunderstanding, hoping her network of acquaintances would pity her and amplify her drama. Instead, people who knew her patterns called her out subtly. Comment threads that she thought would support her began to subtly mock her. Friends she had leaned on for attention quietly withdrew. Invitations she expected to get were never sent. For the first time in years, her charm didn't work. The world had finally learned her game. Meanwhile, I moved forward in ways that were unshakable. I received a promotion at work, a real one, not a token title, and my social circle expanded. I began traveling, networking with people I respected, making friends who actually cared about mutual growth rather than petty drama. I was thriving in every sense, and for the first time, I didn't even think about her, for days at a time. Then came the ultimate twist, the final humiliation. One evening, I was invited to a gala hosted by a prominent charity. I hadn't seen her name anywhere, and I thought I would be safe. But as I entered the grand hall, there she was, sitting alone at a table, dressed extravagantly, scanning the room as if daring anyone to ignore her. She tried to catch the attention of a few high-profile guests, attempting her signature charm, but everyone politely smiled and moved on, busy with their own conversations. Her carefully rehearsed laugh sounded hollow. Every attempt to draw attention bounced off, invisible. I watched from across the room, and for a moment, I felt nothing but compassion. Then I realized something. She had finally become powerless in the only world that mattered. Without anyone reacting to her manipulations, without anyone needing to see her as superior, she had nothing. She had built a life entirely dependent on attention and validation, and now it crumbled quietly but completely. I walked past her, smiling politely, and she looked up at me with something between anger, fear, and recognition. I could almost see the gears turning in her mind, trying to calculate how to regain relevance, how to charm me, how to win. And then she realized. She couldn't. I approached my own friends, laughed with them, and enjoyed the evening. For the first time, I felt fully untouchable. Not because of revenge, but because I had reclaimed myself. She had been trying to control me for years, and the only thing I had to do was live authentically. That was her defeat. Weeks later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had attempted to get a job at a company where I had contacts. She floundered, fumbling interviews, her old tactics failing in every way. She tried to charm, to subtly undermine others, to insert herself into professional circles. But people recognized the pattern. The same manipulations that had worked on young, insecure men now made her look petty, desperate, and unprofessional. Her reputation began to collapse publicly, quietly but irrevocably. And yet, I never celebrated. There was no gloating. I didn't need to. Watching her unravel without me engaging was far more satisfying than any confrontation could ever have been. Every failed attempt, every frustrated reaction, every lonely social post was a confirmation, not that I had won, but that I was free. Eventually, Ronald, my new partner, and I settled into a quiet, joyful life. He never sought drama. I never had to compete for attention. Our home, our work, our evenings together were free of manipulation, free of petty games, free of fear. And one day, I realized something profound. All the heartbreak, all the betrayals, all the attempts to control me had led me to this moment. I had been tested, not by men, not by her, but by my own ability to recognize the toxicity and remove it from my life. That was the ultimate victory. Not revenge, not exposure, not public humiliation, but freedom, growth, and self-respect. Months later, I heard she had moved cities, started over again, trying the same tactics. I didn't think about her anymore. Not because I was cruel, but because I finally didn't care. The girl who had built her life on controlling others had nothing left but herself. And I had everything I ever wanted, a life built on authenticity, loyalty, and love. I had finally won.